Ladies and gents, boys and girls, what is going on Thursday, January the 26th, 2023? Hope you're all doing well. Chris Phillips here, the Daily Crow of the Spurs Up Show, and we have got a big show for you guys today. Really appreciate you all tuning in. We are jam-packed as we double dip with the guests at 12:15. We've got my good friend Michael Bratton. You know him better as SEC Mike of That SEC Podcast. We're going to talk all things Gamecocks football. We have not chatted with Mike since before the season, so tons to catch up on here on this Thursday. Also, of course, 1:15. We got JC Sherbert joining us today as well. I see John Edwards, C. Youngblood, Justin Langford, Travie, Todd Smith, Stephen Borrell Jr., Noah Johns, also those in the Big Cock Club Discord. Head over to the TDC Questions channel. The TDC Questions channel, be sure your questions are answered there. Of course, as always, guys, TDC brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Go download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com. When you do, use the promo code TSUS to receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. You can play anything and everything, college sports, pro sports, everything in between, guys. They've got it over at Prize Picks. So, again, go download the app or go to prizepicks.com. So many fans and listeners of the Daily Crow and of the Spurs Up Show have made tons of money with our friends at Prize Picks, and you should as well. So, again, use promo code TSUS at sign up to receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. Be sure to check them out. What the fuck just happened? Okay, no idea what just happened. But anyways, for the next 15 minutes or so, we're taking your questions, comments, calls. 843-790-3377. I do apologize. The hackers are working early today. Bruin Nation, what's going on? Yeah, the remix. I have no idea why it does that, but here we are. Greg Bedinger says, glad to be back. Missed the last two shows. Anything breaking this week? Michael Smith committed earlier in the week. Greg, if you listen to the podcast that dropped this morning, I caught you up to date with everything that's happened with South Carolina football. It has been a very, very busy week for Gamecocks football. On the recruiting side of things, the Trajan Jeffcoat situation continues to roll on. Outside of that today, we've just been talking baseball. Great conversation, by the way. If you're interested in the Yardcocks, you want to learn more about this upcoming season, this team, if you will, Aaron Fitt at D1Baseball.com joined me. A fantastic conversation. Of course, D1Baseball.com has the Gamecocks ranked 23rd in their preseason poll. And I will say this, I thought Mark Kingston, he made a great point. He was on Sports Talk earlier this week, and I thought he made a great point about the preseason top 25s that, D1Baseball.com, and I mean, the other entities do a great job, right? Baseball America, Perfect Game, College Baseball Nation, our good friends 11.7. They all do a fantastic job, but he made the point that D1Baseball.com is the only outlet that has actually watched them play, that has been out to the field and watched them, right? Aaron Fitt was actually in attendance at the Garnet and Black World Series in the fall. So it's like, how can you make a top 25 if you haven't even seen teams play? And I understand that college baseball, isn't covered as in depth as some other sports. And I totally get too that, D1Baseball.com, those guys, they do it for a living. They do it full time versus some others that maybe don't. But, when you think about it and you take that into consideration, whose preseason top 25 is going to be most accurate? Well, probably the guys who have actually watched the teams play at any point. So, D1Baseball.com is high on South Carolina. Again, they've got the Gamecocks in that preseason top 25. And Aaron Fitt gave a lot of his reasons why. And we've released some content around that this morning, a clip from that conversation. And truly a great conversation. Every conversation I have with the D1 baseball guys, it goes really well. It's really incredible. Those guys know their stuff, and I appreciate Aaron Fitt taking the time. Again, guys, today, 12:15, we got SEC Mike of That SEC Podcast. He joins us. Also, 1:15, of course, JC Sherbert, as we normally do. And then tomorrow on TDC, it's a huge guest week. We've got Kyle Peterson, ESPN college baseball analyst. He joins us tomorrow at 1 o'clock. So really, really excited, guys. We have loaded up on the guests this week and excited to hear what SEC Mike's got to say. Again, I don't think we've chatted with SEC Mike since before the season. So a lot to catch up on. Really, really intrigued to hear what he has to say, especially since Mike is a Tennessee guy, Tennessee guy by trade. So anyways, in the meantime, though, guys, would love to get some of your questions, your comments. 843-790-3377. That's 843-790-3377. Lance, what's going on, my guy? Thank you so much for tuning in. Another rough night last night for the Court Cocks. Gamecocks falling to Florida by 21 points. I mean, what is there really to say, right? Same old, same old. It's just kind of the same old thing. Last night was the first time I've recorded a podcast late in quite a while, right? Because normally I'm not recording after games anymore, recording more so in the afternoon, like 4 or 5 o'clock. I was up late last night till about 10 or so recording the show. But, wanted to do that, wanted to watch the game and take it in and give you guys a live instant reaction. But unfortunately, it's become one of those things where it's like, what's the point? What's the point? Just like, what's the point? So, Chad Godwin. JC said, let's see. John Edward, Elijah Caldwell. Yes, Rock Hill. Yes, Rock Hill. Yeah, and we just talked to JC, by the way, on Inside the Gamecocks. We just talked to Inside the Gamecocks and talked to the Nick Harbor stuff. Of course, Shane Beamer and company were out there, and I see Chad Godwin. I'm not going to pretend like I don't see your comment. Chad Godwin says, Chris, JC knows for a fact Beamer never talked to Riley. Will you now call out the Upstate show? Apologize for saying Beamer is not being honest. I didn't say that Shane Beamer wasn't being honest, Chad. That's why I deleted my tweet, because people completely missed the point. I'm not going back into this, Chad. If you want to go listen to the Tuesday show, or what was it, yesterday's show, or whatever, you're more than welcome to do so. I'm not spending any more energy, any more breath on it. With that being said, JC Sherbert, and I talked to JC after the fact as well, and he also told me that Garrett Riley was never a priority for us. We never pursued him in that manner for the job. So I don't know. Mark has his sources. JC has his sources. Shane Beamer is a source. I'm not going to use this opportunity, Chad, as I'm sure you'd love for me to do, to throw Mark Ryan under the bus and say he's an idiot, he's clueless. And I will just say this. I 110% support Shane Beamer. The entire point of what I tweeted was not to call out Shane Beamer, to take any sort of side. It was more so a mockery of the people in the comments that want to cancel Mark Ryan and cancel anybody for that matter off the internet. A lot of those same people, they want to cancel me off the internet. So and they continue to try to do so to no avail. So I will just say this. It's a reason why I'm really glad my business is not based around being an insider. I would not label myself an insider. I would not label myself. I didn't have any sources. No sources told me anything. When the news came out about Garrett Riley, my reaction was solely from the fan perspective and how fans felt about it. My reaction was not, because I don't know what Shane Beamer wanted. I don't know who Shane Beamer called. I don't know who Shane Beamer contacted. Nobody told me anything. So my tweet wasn't about saying Shane Beamer's a liar. Like, that is the furthest thing from the truth. And that is just a great example of, and hey, I've got to know this, and I know this for a fact, that you put something out there, people can just spin it however they want. It's to insinuate that I was calling Shane Beamer a liar and that I think Shane Beamer's a liar is just completely foolish. It is slapdickery behavior, Carolina slapdick community behavior. So, which is not surprising. Unfortunately, it's very unsurprising. But no, I'm not going to take it as an opportunity to slam someone or throw them under the bus. And hey, whoever's sources got sources, whatever. Mark Ryan sticks by his sources. Dude, I don't really give a damn. We got Dowell Loggins. I don't know even what difference it makes at this point. But yeah, JC Sherbert said that they never even had contact, I guess. I guess he never even called. So is what it is. And I guess what it has to reaffirm is that Dowell Loggins really was our choice. And that should give you full confidence it should work, because that's the guy that we wanted. So, I mean, Coleman says Beamer didn't contact Riley at all. Why not? I don't know, because Dowell Loggins was his guy. I mean, I think a lot of it, I'll be totally honest with you, Chad, and I just said I wasn't going to spend a whole lot of time on it. And again, I don't know. I trust JC Sherbert and what he says. I don't think Mark Ryan's completely full of shit. I don't think, like, I find it hard to believe he would just completely make something up, but I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know. I just look at the information that's presented, and there it is. I was never agreeing that his sources were 110% accurate. Again, I was never insinuating that Shane Beamer's a liar. I would never do such a thing, because I love Shane Beamer and I've got a tight relationship with Shane Beamer. I've got a tight relationship with the entire coaching staff. And again, here's the thing, guys. I'll say this. Those of you that listen to my show, you're hearing me say all this and you're giving me the opportunity. You are listening and listening to me explain things. And so I see people on social media that bitch and moan and this, that, and they have questions of certain things. If you're not willing to even seek out the answer in our content, I'm not going back and forth with some troll on social media. Like, I'm just not doing it. I'm just not doing it. So you want to know the answers to things I think, you can listen to the show here. You can listen to the podcast. I'm not using Twitter as an incubator to go back and forth with the mob, if you will. Just not doing it. So let's jump to the phone lines.
Win French.
To accept.
What's going on, my man? How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. What's up?
Nothing much. I'm a huge fan of yours. I'm a big Carolina fan for many, many years, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking my call. It's really a huge honor to even be on the phone with you.
Well, I appreciate it, man. You said your last name was French, correct?
Yes, sir.
You don't have any relation to Jonathan French, the new catcher, do you? I'm just curious. That's a unique last name.
No, I do not. I do not. I do not. I was a former high school football coach at Dutch Fork High School, though.
Okay. Nice. Yeah, Jonathan French, his last name is French. I was like, maybe there's some relation here. But no, I appreciate you calling in, man. Sincerely, I appreciate it.
Yeah, like I said, I'm a huge fan of yours. I see you on game day, or I try and see you on game day whenever I'm down there and everything like that. And I wanted to smoke a cigar with you because I know you're a big timer in cigars and everything like that. But how do you think going into 2023 is going to work out for our Gamecocks?
On the football side of things, I think it's going to work out really well. I mean, I think we've got holes on the roster that we still probably need to address. I think I'm a little bit more concerned about the defensive side than the offensive side, with the return of Rattler and Wells. And it's going to be, it's like every season, right? There's question marks. I mean, every team has them. But, I think you've got to plug some holes up front on the defensive side. You got to be able to slow down the run better. The secondary is going to be a new look secondary, but you got a lot of talented guys there. You've added some pieces at linebacker. So I think up front defensively is the big question. Offensively, it's just finding consistency, right? I know the offensive line is going to be a little bit retooled. You need to find a second and third option at the wide receiver position. I think we feel good about Trey Knox at tight end. If you got a Nick Harbor, I think we feel confident he's going to step in and play a big role. But you got Rattler and Juice back, and that was the big win, I think, of this offseason and getting them back on your roster. And my way too early prediction was 9-3. I think the floor is probably of expectations is an 8-win season. I think that's what people want to see. And I think all of a sudden the Gamecocks, are a dark horse in the SEC East. Realistically, do I think they're on the level to beat a Georgia? No. And I know Michael Bratton's going to join us. He'll have something to say about that because he's a bit of a Tennessee guy. And I know Tennessee's going to be really optimistic going in the year, but I mean, I think South Carolina's in a great position if they can plug some of those holes they've got right now. I mean, I think they're in a great position to have a big year in 2023. It starts with that UNC game week 1, man. I think that's going to be the tone setter.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And really, I'm kind of, as you are probably as well, I'm kind of biased on the whole NIL stuff and people transferring. And it's really like kind of scratching your head. One of those things where you just you look at the people that transferred out and you're like, seriously, really, man?
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean,
at the end of the day,
all we got's all we need. That's really what it comes down to end of the day. So.
Oh yeah, definitely for sure, man. But like I said, I'm a huge fan of yours. I have been for a couple of years now, and like I said, I know you're doing what you love doing, man, and I applaud you for it.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate that, man. Thank you so much. Truly, I sincerely appreciate the call.
All right, have a good one, bud.
Yeah, man. You too. Take care. Great stuff. Great stuff from our guy calling in. All right, we're going to close up the phone lines. We got Michael Bratton waiting in the wings here of that SEC podcast. You know him better as SEC Mike. Let's see. All right, phone lines are closed up. We're going to see if my guy Michael Bratton will cut his camera on, or maybe he's just going audio. I don't know. Let's see. Yeah, it's 12:15. All right, we're going to go ahead, get him in. Mike, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
What's going on? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. What's up?
Hey, yeah, sorry, no video. It says not supported. I don't know what the heck's going on with that. But if you want to see my ugly mug, I got a YouTube page for that. But hey, I'm doing well, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, man. I appreciate you tuning in, jumping in with us, and it's all good with the camera, man. We call the audible when we need to, and hey, we can hear the sound of your voice, which is really all that matters. Really excited to chat with you, Mike, because I know we have not spoken since before the season. I think it was the last time you and I spoke on the air. What a year it was for the Gamecocks, man. An 8-win season. Obviously, the final 2 weeks, I feel like, really turn the tide and change the narrative, if you will, the big wins over Tennessee and the arch rival Clem sucks. When you look at this year, obviously you lose in the Gator Bowl to Notre Dame, but your overall thoughts on the job that Shane Beamer and company did, especially, again, what they did in those final 2 weeks, bouncing back. And obviously I know you heard me go on record and say that I thought Tennessee was just going to do whatever they wanted to South Carolina. And, sure enough, I'd say most improbable 2-week stretch, or one of the most improbable stretches we've ever seen from a team in those final 2 weeks to really put the exclamation point on year 2 of the Beamer era.
Yeah, I think South Carolina just scored again on Tennessee's defense. So I'm wearing my Jalen Hyatt shirt. I'm really disappointed this video's not working out. I don't know if that's much of a troll. He didn't do much against the Gamecocks this year anymore. But yeah, I mean, hell, I didn't see that coming. We basically didn't even spend much time previewing the game because we were laughing up at South Carolina's odds. I think they were like a 20-point underdog, of course, coming off an ugly performance against Florida. So I don't know where in the hell South Carolina pulled that performance out from under them, but and maybe because I am a Tennessee guy, I'm more impressed with Clemson, with how they beat Clemson on the road. And really, I know it was just a 1-point ball game, but that was due solely to mistakes South Carolina made in that game. They dominated Clemson, a Clemson team that was much like Tennessee on a path to the college football playoff, snapping that streak. Just a remarkable job. And the only critique I would have, and I don't even know if this is fair because it's early in Shane Beamer's tenure, but we just like to see a little bit more consistency coming out the gate a little bit stronger. Now, on the road at Arkansas, that was a tough one. Nobody was touching Georgia this year. So again, maybe that's not a fair criticism, but they better start quick next season because I think this is something I pointed out the other day. I'm looking at next year's schedule. Of course, North Carolina right out the gate. I don't know how good they're going to be, but everybody's hyping up their quarterback. And aside from the bowl game a couple of years ago, North Carolina's been a real problem with the Gamecocks. I got confidence that the Gamecocks can get that one. But more importantly, 2 weeks down the road at Georgia and then 2 more weeks at Tennessee, you got to be playing on your A game because I think Tennessee and Georgia, well, obviously Georgia's here to stay, but I don't think Tennessee's going anywhere either. And the final 7 games are all winnable for South Carolina. So if you come out of that winning 4 games out of your first 5, which is very doable, yeah, we may be talking 10, 11 win season.
Now I want to get into that 2023 schedule, Mike, in just a second. But you look at the offseason, right? The dust settles, and of course the recruiting momentum for South Carolina has been an all-time high. But the biggest get, I would argue, of the offseason was getting Spencer Rattler and Juice Wells to return. Just talk about, I'd love to hear your perspective on how that changes your outlook of South Carolina football. Because again, you mentioned, it sounds like you're saying, the ceiling could be 10 or 11 wins this year. And I talked about, again, that South Carolina, I really felt like that the return of your quarterback and receiver and that duo, which looked to be one of the best duos in the SEC at the end of the year, that takes you from being those guys being back or not being back. You go from a fringe kind of 6 or 7 win, just kind of a fringe bowl team, to now, like you mentioned, having that ceiling and realistically shooting for 9 or 10 wins. But your just overall thoughts on, because I think most of us thought Spencer Rattler was a 1-year and done deal, and there was still some debate and speculation on what he would do after the season and after the bowl game concluded. And sure enough, Shane Beamer's able to keep them home and have them return. And all of a sudden now South Carolina, we thought it was going to be this 1-year experiment. Now you got your quarterback and your best receiver back. And I think it all of a sudden just makes them a threat in the East.
Yeah, no doubt. And kind of similar to Shane Beamer. I mean, we need to see that consistency from Spencer Rattler. I mean, he's got an NFL arm. I mean, people say that, and that's some people, they attach that to 30 quarterbacks a year, but it's not true. There's only about a dozen that have that in college football, if that. And Spencer Rattler is one of those. And I was singing his praises all off season. I kind of felt a little bit foolish. I mean, the old takes guy he was blasting me during I think it was the South Carolina State game. I think Rattler threw a couple picks in that game. They still won by 40 points because they're so outmatched in that ball game. But I felt a little bit of redemption because again, we saw that against Tennessee. We saw it against Clemson, even though he may have had a mistake or two in Clemson. They don't win that ball game. They don't even come close to winning it without Spencer Rattler against Clemson and certainly against Tennessee. I mean, he looked like, I know that there's jokes out there, Heisman candidate. He looked like a Heisman candidate during that run. And if he can put together a 10, 11, 12 season similar to how he closed it out, I'm fascinated to see how he performs in this Dow Loggins offense. Marcus Satterfield, I realize, he's a punching bag for the fan base, but according to some analytics I trust, I was pretty shocked at this myself. He was around a top 25 play caller. Now, I think that was heavily, influenced by how the season ended and how great they were, because certainly on the face of it, he did not do a good job for most of his career. So I'm just very curious to see how this Dow Loggins hire, what that does for Spencer Rattler. Does that get some more consistency out of his game? And I think it was a wise move for him to come back because he would have been drafted, no doubt, but I find it very hard to believe he would have been a first-round pick after this last season. I certainly think he can be in the next draft. So I think it's a win-win for everybody involved.
Mike, I want to get your take on the Dowell Loggins thing. Before I do, though, this is a little bit of a side note and switching gears. You're locked in on Twitter, right? And obviously, you've built a massive following for yourself, and via your personal channel, SEC Mike, and that SEC podcast, whatever. You're in touch though with all the SEC fan bases and SEC Twitter as a whole. So I'm sure you keep an eye on some of the madness and the mania that occurs within Gamecock Twitter. Is every SEC fan base like that? Does every SEC fan base kind of jab back and forth with each other like on a daily basis? Because I tell people South Carolina is the greatest team to cover and have a business around because it just feels like it's nonstop drama. And then when you get into the offseason, it's like people have this pent-up energy that they normally use on South Carolina football. And when the Gamecocks are not playing, they use it on social media, and it feels like shit hits the fan on a daily basis. Is that normal in the SEC, or is Gamecock Nation unique in that way?
The only fan base that's not like that, Chris, is Vanderbilt. Let me tell you. And that's why I love it, man. And we're bringing in Texas and Oklahoma soon enough, and I can only imagine they're the same way. But, yeah, I mean, 1 minute they love you, 1 minute they hate you. And if you're putting takes out there, you're putting out content, you got to be able to be man enough to take at all. I love it though, because if they're not like that, I mean, I kind of kid, but it is a reality. The only one like that is or not like that is Vanderbilt. And the worst thing that a fan base can be is apathetic to the program. And at times, South Carolina fans, they can seem a little crazy. Trust me, it's all across the SEC, and it's just because we care so much. We care too much, but hey, that's why guys like me and you got a job, because people care so much. So I will never look down on people caring about their football program. But yeah, I mean, it's a sight to behold. When a transfer comes in, when a coordinator search is going on, when God forbid a head coaching search is going on, the madness, the plane tracking. My uncle told me this. My sister's boyfriend told me this. On and on and on. It's a madhouse, and I love every second of it.
It's the best reality TV that the world can provide, man. I mean, it really is. But on that note, right, the coordinator search, that's exactly what we went through. And the Gamecocks land on Dowell Loggins. And that was a very, I would say, highly scrutinized hiring by Shane Beamer. And we all kind of felt like this was the hire he needed to hit a home run on. And Shane Beamer has emphasized multiple times that he got his guy, and this is the guy they wanted. I think if you listen to the presser when Shane Beamer and Dowell Loggins both spoke, I think that calmed a lot of Gamecock fans' nerves in regards to, I felt like if you could have made a checklist of everything you wanted them to address and talk about and make a point of emphasis, they did that. So everything sounded good. So far, so good. But your just overall thoughts on the hiring of Dowell Loggins, and of course, the pressure I feel like was heightened and turned up a little bit. Not that it wasn't already high, but when your arch rival goes and gets arguably the hottest OC name on the board, which Shane Beamer has implored again, they got their guy, and I'm not saying they're not. So everybody in the comments, please, for the love of God, understand that. But just from your perspective, right? I mean, that's how you see it. Garrett Riley was the hot name. Dowell Loggins a little bit more off the wall, but your just overall thoughts. Do you have any familiarity with Loggins? I know, he's an Arkansas alum. He spent some time at Arkansas, but I think, or at least from the national perspective, or, those that don't keep up with it like we do, Dowell Loggins might be a name that they are unfamiliar with.
Yes, it was pretty interesting to see that turn from the Gamecocks, Chris, because it seemed like totally out on the guy. And then he holds his introductory presser. Mm-hmm. He's the best damn coordinator in the SEC. You know what I mean? So I even I was trying to find the tweet while you were talking there. I couldn't find it, but we had one guy, Gamecock fan, basically bashing me. I didn't even say anything too bad about Dowell Loggins, and then I looked it up literally a week prior. He said, "I'm done with the Gamecocks if we hire this Loggins." Then Loggins has his presser. Man, we got our guy. All we got's all we need, all this. And this is the same guy in a week's time. And I said, "Is this you?" And he said, "That was last week. This is this week." You know what I mean? So, again, that goes back to the fanaticism. It is kind of interesting. I mean, I love Shane Beamer, and I love the energy, the enthusiasm. You can see it in this guy, win or loss, particularly after a loss in these post games. Man, he is heated, and he gets kind of pissy. And that's not a critique, because I'll take 12 Shane Beamers over 12 Nick Sabans and Kirby Smarts, who are damn robots up there. And trust me, they are not like that behind the scenes. So, hey, they're successful. I'm not calling them out, because I think everybody looks at Georgia and Alabama and wants that level of success. But I'd rather have a guy that's transparent, that he wears his emotion on his sleeves because it means the world to him. And, we see it clearly. I mean, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. He's criticizing media members. He's putting people on blast. He'll do it on social media. He'll do it in a press conference. I do find it a little weird, though, that he has to point out, how many SEC programs were in on Dowell Loggins. I would say this: if he was still at Arkansas, he'd be the offensive coordinator today. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that makes you feel any better. I know programs that looked at him, Kentucky and A&M, those are two of the. I know South Carolina fans look down on Kentucky, but they've been pretty steady the last couple of years. So there is a track record, and I'm a big believer that these coaches, they get paid a ton of money. I'm not saying their jobs don't matter, but I think players matter more than coaches. And when he was in the NFL, I've seen the articles. I don't watch the NFL that closely anymore since I started working in the SEC, but I have seen the numbers. His offenses were terrible, but who did he have as quarterback? And he worked with some of the worst franchises in the NFL. So I don't put much stock into that. In the example I use, Mel Tucker, when he was with the Chicago Bears as a defensive coordinator, that was literally the worst defense I've ever seen in my life. And Kirby Smart hired this guy to be his defensive coordinator. I thought he was making a huge mistake. And I mean, he was instrumental in getting Georgia off the ground. Now he's $100 million man at Michigan State. So I don't really hold what these coaches do in the NFL against them. But, he does have an incredibly strong reputation. And Shane Beamer standing by his man, I just thought it was hilarious when he pulled out his damn Rolodex of Sean Payton, Bill Parcells, and on and on and on of people that speak highly of Dowell Loggins. And like I said, I mean, he will probably be the head coach of the Arkansas Razorbacks, probably, down the line. I don't know when that'll be, but hopefully after South Carolina wins a SEC national title.
Mike, let's move to the transfer portal and NIL, because certainly it hit the Gamecocks this cycle. A program that won it big last year by picking up guys like Spencer Rattler, Juice Wells, Devontae Reed. The list goes on and on. South Carolina was ravaged by it, right? We've seen Jordan Birch, Gilbert Edmond on the defensive side, and offensively, of course, most notably, Jaheim Bell to Florida State, Marshawn Lloyd to Southern Cal. Your just overall thoughts on the portal as a whole, but especially how it's affected South Carolina. I mean, I think it's one thing when you got guys, when they're hitting the portal to find more playing time, or it's just not a good fit, right? Guys that don't play a ton, but when you've got SEC starters, like undoubted, like Marshawn Lloyd is going to be the starting running back. There's no question. Jaheim Bell, I think that one was a little bit more understandable, but still going to be a weapon in your offense. Jordan Birch, a starter, no doubt. So I'm sure you can imagine why it's just tough for Gamecock fans to stomach that. Your overall thoughts on the transfer portal, NIL as a whole, because it feels like it's getting even more out of control, and just the way it affected South Carolina specifically.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild, no doubt. But I certainly think South Carolina's benefited a lot more than they've been hurt. I mean, I don't know if they don't have Spencer Rattler. They probably don't have Juice Wells, if not for the transfer portal, among many other players. And I think what it has done, I know Georgia is still dominant, but it seems to me like it's helped elevate a lot of teams that normally would be, I don't want to say at the bottom, but in the mid-tier, particularly in the SEC. I mean, Tennessee's been helped out tremendously. LSU just won the West. That would have never happened in year one under Brian Kelly without the transfer portal. Lane Kiffin, the portal king, he's made Ole Miss relevant. Ole Miss does not recruit on the level of Alabama and A&M and LSU, yet they're competing with these teams because of the transfer portal. Arkansas is another one that has been helped tremendously. Of course, they just got ravaged by it themselves. So, I mean, the portal giveth and the portal taketh, no doubt. But I think, and particularly as the SEC gets stronger, as Texas and Oklahoma come into the league, make it a super league, I think the entire rest of the country, if you do well in the Big 12, even the Big 10, Pac-12, what have you, but you really want to prove yourself at the highest level, that's going to open the doors already to the SEC for programs like South Carolina to take advantage. It's one thing to put up nice stats against Cal and Stanford and all those garbage teams they got there. But if you want to make it to the NFL, you got to come to a place like South Carolina and face Georgia. You got to face Florida. You got to face Clemson week in, week out. So I at the end of the day, I mean, I get it. Everyone's kind of frustrated when you lose a guy. You're claiming offseason titles when you land a guy. I think it's good for the SEC. And another thing, I think it hurts Alabama and Georgia potentially, because guys there, they got many, many talented guys that are not in key roles that want to get on the field. And just because you can't get on the field at a place like that doesn't mean you can't somewhere else. And that has hurt depth at those premier institutions. So again, I think it helps bring them down to the pack a little bit, which is good for college football.
Mike, I'd love to hear you speak on recruiting just briefly. South Carolina, tons of momentum, top 20 nationally in recruiting, which, it is an achievement, but I mean, almost the entire SEC is top 20. It's extremely competitive. But either way, the Gamecocks making great strides in recruiting. Shane Beamer doing things in regards to blue chip ratio that nobody's ever done, not even Steve Spurrier. Your just overall thoughts on the momentum they've built on the recruiting side of things. You look at what they're doing in 2024. They've got 3 commitments, all 3 are 4 stars, and one of them is Cam Pringle, the number 1 offensive tackle in the 2024 class. You look at 2025, and they're trending for a lot of big-time guys as well. Of course, the decision of Nicholas Harbor will be next Wednesday in South Carolina. They had their in-home last night with him. They feel like they're in a really good position there. Your overall thoughts, again, the 30,000-foot view. I know you got to look at 14 different teams, but your just thoughts on the momentum that South Carolina has built, the way they've been able to translate that over to the recruiting side of things.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to what I was talking about with Shane Beamer and just his emotion and his, the love for the players and the program and how he hurts after a loss. He takes that same motto on the recruiting trail. And that's why we're having so much success. And not to mention facilities that are as good, if not better, than anybody in the country. Fan base that's out of this world. They'll love you to death if you're a Gamecock and you're making plays. And heck, even if you're not, you just commit to the Gamecocks. You already got thousands of supporters overnight. The game day experience, the pregame is unmatched down there when they're blasting 2001 and blasting Tennessee out of the stadium, kicking them out of the college football playoff. Same thing with Clemson. And I love the fact that Clemson, I guess they're like too good for South Carolina prospects. I don't know what their deal is. So, hey, credit to the Gamecocks for, paying attention to the local prospects. I love a lot of the coaches. We got to hand it to a lot of the assistants on Shane Beamer's staff, are very, very underrated coaching staff in the SEC. And it's paying off big time. Like you said, he's just doing a better and better job each and every season. No doubt. I mean, I couldn't believe people were questioning the contract extension, not necessarily the extension, but how much Shane Beamer was getting paid. I mean, that's the going rate in the SEC. You got to keep this momentum rolling. And like I said, I mean, it's not crazy to sit here and say 10 wins, 11 wins next season. I'm not sitting here predicting that necessarily, but I could certainly see that playing out. And if you do that, how could you not land a top 5, top 10 recruiting class? I don't think that's out of the question either.
Yeah, Mike, to your point about Shane Beamer's contract, he's still, I don't even think, in the top half of the SEC in salaries, right? So, I mean, it's like you said, that's just kind of the norm. He was severely underpaid for the job he did for the first 2 years, and certainly the extension and the raise was well-deserved. Hey, let's move into the 2023 season, the schedule again, Mike. I'm not going to ask you to lock in a way too early prediction. I mean, you've kind of given your range if things go well. If you've got a worst-case scenario, I guess you can throw that out there too, and just generic thoughts. But I look at the season, Mike, and you may have heard me talking earlier. There's certainly holes they need to plug on this roster, just like every other school, though, right? You've got question marks, if you will. And, I mean, we're sitting here in January, so they've got plenty of time. But you look at this schedule, Mike. Georgia's got a new quarterback. And I know they're still Georgia, but Georgia's got a new quarterback. Mississippi State, unfortunately, we have to talk about the elephant in the room. No more Mike Leach, rest in peace. But what are they going to look like that game's at Willie B? Tennessee's got Bazooka Joe. I don't think Tennessee's going anywhere, but we saw what the Gamecocks just did to them. Florida is a work in progress, and I think that's putting it kindly. At Mizzou, we'll have a new quarterback. They've had your number, but you still feel confident about that when you can finally break that streak. Texas A&M, what are they? You just snap the streak against them. Kentucky's got a new quarterback. Clem sucks, so you just beat. Like you mentioned, the first half of that schedule is really going to tell us everything we need to know. North Carolina, Furman, at Georgia, Mississippi State, at Tennessee, the bye week, Florida, at Mizzou. The Gamecocks have got to come out of the gate fast. But, I mean, Mike, you heard me talking about the QBs. I mean, I feel like for me, there's a real reason to come into this season with a lot of optimism. I'm trying to even talk myself off the ledge of picking 10 wins, if you will. My way too early prediction was 9-3. Again, I still think there's questions to be answered, but I think it's realistic to expect South Carolina, and we've heard everybody talk in year 3. That's kind of the year that sort of defines a coach's tenure, fairly or unfairly. It's a huge year. And one thing college football fans, I'm sure you know this, obviously, Mike, that fans don't want to do, they don't want to go backwards. So once you win 8, they don't want to go back and win 7. They don't want to win 6. They want to win 9, right? People think that progress is supposed to be this chart where it's a linear progression. It doesn't always work that way. Just ask Arkansas how they did in year 3 of the Sam Pittman era. So, your just overall thoughts again going into 2023. I know you've touched on it briefly, but it's shaping up to where it really could be a big, big year for South Carolina.
Yeah, and expectation is always a dangerous thing in the SEC.
I mean, Mike, we had people last year picking 9 and 10 wins. So I can't even imagine what this summer is going to provide for the Gamecock fan base.
Right. It just, I mean, not that I've gotten some backlash from a lot of other SEC fan bases, but I don't know if you've checked out my latest power rankings. I got South Carolina number 5 in the entire SEC. Now, the only teams higher, Georgia, LSU, Tennessee, and Alabama. So if you're putting South Carolina as the 5th best team in the SEC, which maybe that's not even high enough. Yeah, I mean, you have to be looking at 9-10 win type season, I would think. But again, I think it's all going to be determined early in the season. That North Carolina, that Bank of America Stadium, at times that seems to be a house of horrors for South Carolina. Georgia, I mean, they could be down 4 quarterbacks. I don't know if anyone's touching them.
Yep.
At least I got to hype them up because they're so dominant. But the back half, I think it all looks winnable. So there's no doubt that South Carolina should be very, very good next season. But I would also say, because I don't want to just come off as a South Carolina homer, I also think 5 through 10, 11 in the SEC, very, very, very tight. There's not much separation between those teams. What if Kentucky with Liam Cohen, what if their offense, because I was never a big Will Levis fan, what if they are better on offense, which is, God, they can't be much worse than they were last year. What if Bobby Petrino is exactly what A&M needed, which I think he is? All of a sudden, A&M looks pretty good. Missouri's defense was pretty incredible. The offense was a train wreck. They have added a quarterback. They've added a really good offensive coordinator. What if they get it going? I think Florida's going to be pretty terrible, though. I can't really spin that as a dangerous game. You got 2 weeks to prepare for it at home, but there are some landmines in this schedule. So again, I'm not trying to be pie in the sky. I would not sit here and say, yep, go, jump off a cliff if South Carolina doesn't win 11. But I think 9-10 wins is certainly in the realm of possibilities. And if everything goes right, that's what I would be anticipating if I'm a Gamecock fan.
Mike, I appreciate you being gracious with your time. Last thing before I get you out of here, and again, you just mentioned your SEC power rankings, and I apologize for not bringing those up earlier because, like you mentioned, your early 2023 power rankings, you do have the Gamecocks 5th. I just love to hear you expand and explain when you look at Carolina, what stands out to you as to why you put them up so highly? Because again, I mean that's a great spot to be in. Like you mentioned, I mean, the teams ahead of them, they're all elite ball clubs. But what stands out is that you like about South Carolina to put them number 5 in your power rankings?
Well, a lot of that has to do with Spencer Rattler and Juice Wells. I mean, I think that has the potential to be the best connection in the SEC next season. Pete Limbo, I think they've got elite special teams, the best special teams in the SEC. You cannot overlook that. Clayton White, I don't think they have enough personnel. At least they didn't at the tail end. I mean, it was kind of tough to watch in that Notre Dame game. They just ran out of gas. But I like some of the additions they made in the front 7 to kind of bolster that, getting the left tackle back, Dials back. I mean, they've got some nice pieces to work around. And again, it would have been nice, like you said, if Marshawn Lloyd come back, but I hate to say it, but running back is like the most replaceable position in all of college football. So I got faith in South Carolina to get that going. And if the offensive line just gets a little bit better, this could be a very, very scary team. And I just love the momentum under Shane Beamer. Because again, I mean, we live now in such a society where we forget everything, but my God, they had to start a GA at quarterback and they managed to make it to a bowl game, and not only make it to a bowl game, but clobber a North Carolina team that had an NFL quarterback under center, and they take that momentum. I realize it was a little slow last season, but man, all the potential in the world with the Gamecocks, and I don't put hardly any stock in bowl games, and that's easy to say when you lose it, but I just don't with players opting out and just the weirdness of all that. So I guess I am kind of overlooking that Notre Dame loss, but again, just the way they finished the season against Tennessee and Clemson, if they carry that over, I mean, they're going to be one of the biggest problems in the SEC next season. I really do think.
Michael Bratton, you know him better as SEC Mike of that SEC podcast. Mike, truly appreciate you taking the time, my friend. It's always a pleasure chatting with you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. We'll talk soon. Appreciate you, Mike. Great stuff from SEC Mike. As always, the season cannot get here soon enough. Guys, that being said, we're going to open back up the phone lines on the other side of the break. I want to continue to hear from you, more of your questions, your comments, your calls, and more. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. All right, guys, are back. Taking your questions, comments, calls, 843-790-3377. Really quick update when it comes to the TSUS Spring Tour. We are working with our friends over at Carolina Ale House to finalize those dates. Probably not going to start the Spring Tour until end of March, maybe even beginning of April. So going to start a lot later than I expected, but understandably, Carolina Ale House wanted to wait until we actually hit the spring and things warmed up a little bit. Yours truly, I'm just so antsy on this side of things, just ready to sort of jump the gun a little bit. But as soon as we get those dates finalized, guys, the spring tour will take place. I will let you all know, obviously, exactly when it's going to happen. We'll post the dates. We'll publish everything on social media, but really excited. We're working through that, getting it ready to go, but we'll probably not even start until earliest would be late March, mid to late March, I would say. So just stay tuned for that. Also, I want to say thank you to Michael Bratton, SEC Mike, that SEC podcast. That SEC podcast is a fantastic job, and really appreciate him and his insight. And I think, obviously, again, he sounds very high on the Gamecocks because they could win 10 or 11 games. 10 or 11 games. So the SEC just dropped their 2023 SEC softball preseason poll. Florida is picked to win it all, or at least pick number 1. South Carolina picked 13th, which there's only 13 teams because I guess Vanderbilt does not have a softball team. That's very interesting. But the Gamecocks picked dead last in the SEC. So this is a big year for Bev Smith. Very, very big year for Beverly Smith, no doubt. I would expect baseball, the coaches' polls and stuff like that, I would expect baseball to drop very, very soon. I just saw the Big 12 drop there. So I thought it was interesting also that SEC Mike talking about that Dowell Loggins could be the next head coach at Arkansas. I think that would certainly be a vote of confidence for Dowell Loggins, and that he's a caliber, he's a head coaching caliber type of coach. I mean, I think that's got to make you feel pretty good about the decision for him to be OC. John Edwards said, I actually like that the spring tour is pushed back because it'll be warmer. We can be outside. Yeah, you're right. John Edwards, you're absolutely right. We can use the patios. No doubt. So I'm flexible. I'm good to go whenever. I just, I was ready to go, man. I'm antsy. I love doing it. And so I see Coleman Hall and Coach Ford and Jeff Tarpley and y'all going back and forth craziness in the comments. I love it. It's electric. It's electric in here. All right, let's jump to the phone lines.
Call from
Dalton.
Dalton, what's up, man? How are you?
I've been better, man. Stuck at home with COVID right now.
Oh, man. I feel like every time you call me, you're sick. Or a lot of times you've called me, you've been sick. But I guess that's when you're staying home.
Yeah, because I can't get out of work.
Well, I hate that's the reason. I hate that's the reason you're not at work. But either way, man. What's up?
But yeah, I wanted to call and sort of ask your opinion if you think that, like, we picking South Carolina second in the SEC East is a realistic sort of place for us, because I know that we haven't been top 3, or we haven't been top 2 in the East in a while. I think Tennessee finished ahead of us. Mm-hmm. We may have finished 3 or 4 this year. But I legitimately think that with all the guys we have coming back, our quarterback situation is the most, I would say, I guess I have the most confidence in our quarterback situation out of any other team in the East. And I just think it sets up really well to sort of come down between us and Georgia to compete for that first spot there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think when you look at who's back and who's not for other schools, and to your point, to your original question, which was, could you see us being picked second in the East? I mean, if you pick South Carolina to finish second in the East, I don't think that's I don't think you're off your rocker. I think there's reason to justify that pick, especially, if you're thinking the Gamecocks could go 9-3, 10-2, certainly they could finish second in the SEC East. I will tell you this, that if I had to predict right now at SEC Media Days, I think the media will pick Tennessee to finish second, just because, as you know, we just typically don't get the benefit of the doubt from people. We just don't, right? South Carolina, until we earn it, we just don't get the benefit of the doubt. So if I had to predict right now, I think Georgia absolutely, certainly will be picked to win the SEC East at Media Days. I think the media will then slot Tennessee as the number 2 team. I think South Carolina will be picked to finish 3rd. I mean, the only other team I could see, because like SEC Mike said, I mean, Florida's going to be terrible. So I don't think Florida's going to be up there. Maybe Mizzou, but I don't see that either. So I think the media picks the game.
Is their quarterback returning?
Well, they've got a new quarterback. Apparently, I don't even know who it is, but apparently Mike was saying they've got a quarterback they feel good about, a new offensive coordinator, so the offense should be better. I mean, heck, I'm more so worried about Mizzou from the standpoint of, it seems like Eli Drinkwitz, for whatever reason, has some magic spell against us that he pulls out that he just can't lose to South Carolina. So going back to his days at App State. So, again, though, I think 2 and 3 is going to be Tennessee and South Carolina. I don't think I don't think Kentucky's going to be all that great. I mean, I guess, depending on what Devin O'Leary can do, and they've got a new OC as well. But when it comes to known commodities, I mean, I know Dowell Loggins is new, but when you think about, you've got Spencer Rattler and you've got Juice Wells back, that alone, I think puts you in the discussion to finish in that 2 spot. Again, I think it'll be Tennessee picked to finish 2nd just because they're Tennessee and what they did last year. And I think a lot of people think that Joe Milton's going to be, not necessarily as good as Hendon Hooker was, but they're not going to take that much of a step back. You know what I mean? And I don't think Tennessee's going anywhere either. I think Tennessee is back to being an 8-win team, probably minimum. Like, I think Josh Heupel's actually doing a really good job. And I know as the number 1 Vol hater, you hate to hear that. I know Brendan M hates to hear that and others hate to hear that, but I don't care how good they are. We beat them 63-38. So what difference does it make? I don't care if they win 10 games as long as we can beat them. But yeah, I think it'll be a battle between those 2 schools.
Yeah, I
for
mean,
the 2 spot.
I do think Tennessee and Georgia have a lot of talent coming back, or obviously they're recruiting very well. South Carolina's recruiting very well. Georgia's recruiting very well. But if you just look at the personnel and the experience, like, obviously Joe Milton has a lot of experience, right? He's been in college for, 20 years, it feels like, when he was at Michigan and then transferred to Tennessee. But I don't know. I just don't think that no matter how good of a schemer Josh Heupel is, and his offensive scheme is obviously very hard to defend, it's very good. I just don't know if Joe Milton is going to be able to be consistent throughout an entire season. But again, like you were saying, preseason, probably everybody's going to pick Tennessee to finish in that 2nd slot just because they're going to get the benefit of the doubt. But, Hendon Hooker obviously was a special player.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't know if Joe Milton is going to be that.
Well, and there's going to be a lot of pressure on Joe Milton, right? Because they've got this $8 million quarterback coming in. I think if Milton struggles, man, there's going to be a lot of pressure to put the freshman in. But yeah, so to your point, I mean, I think it's, this isn't the Tennessee show, but of course we play them. It's a point of emphasis. It's a point of interest for us. But I think that
and Knoxville has been a house of horrors for us recently. Yeah. I mean, it's like we can't win a game in Knoxville ever.
Yeah, it's a tough place to play, number 1, but number 2, like you mentioned, we have not played well there of late. I mean, the games haven't even been remotely close. So, and Tennessee's going to have revenge on their mind, certainly, but, there's going to be a lot of ball to play before that. I mean, I think the tone setter obviously is North Carolina. You got to be able to go out there and beat UNC because I think that's a game, Dalton, where, again, one game doesn't like wreck your season necessarily, but we're all going to be coming into this season with hopes and dreams of 9 or, God forbid, 10 wins. And I think if you lose that UNC game, all of a sudden you go back to – you got to almost like scale back the expectations, right? Like, okay, 8-4 now would be a great year again, right? Like 7-5 might be more realistic than it was. And, there's a lot of emphasis on using.
You beat UNC, the next big game you got coming up is in Athens, right? Yeah. And I'm not going to say that, it's likely that we'll beat Georgia. I think we'll definitely be underdogs going to their place. But you look at their quarterback situation and, they're going to have a new guy come in. Yeah, obviously they have a bunch of weapons. Their defense is going to be elite, but offensively, are they going to be able to produce the same way that they were this year with a much more experienced quarterback that's been in the system for a while?
Yeah, no, for sure. So it's that's going to be a really, really fun game week 1. I think it's probably going to be a close ball game, back and forth, 2 great quarterbacks. And again, if you're going to hit that 9-win or better mark, I think you've got to beat North Carolina. It's just got to have it, and you got to snap the streak against Mizzou. That cannot continue. That has to stop. That has to stop. I dare to say, Dalton, I'd almost rather beat Mizzou than Tennessee. Like I'm just so tired of losing to Missouri. I don't know. I'd like to just beat them both, right? Not even have the conversation.
Especially because Missouri, talent-wise, like isn't going to be nearly what they were, this year. I mean, they lost their first or second best receiver. Obviously, they still have that 5-star guy, Luther Burden, but they lost Dominique Lovett. So, in their quarterback situation, I mean, I don't think they're going to have an elite quarterback. So, you've got to go to Como and handle business.
Yeah.
That's first and foremost,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But that's kind of what I wanted to say. I think it is realistic that we finish second in the East, at least, maybe even first if we somehow win that game in Athens. But we'll just have to see.
That'd be something for sure. Yeah, 2-0 going to Athens. That is the goal. And then, hey, throw the kitchen sink at the dogs and just see what happens, man, after 60 minutes. So, Dalton, I appreciate you calling in, my guy. Hope you feel better. Hope you get over COVID soon. And, appreciate you.
All right. Peace out.
Yeah, man. Take care, Dalton. Great stuff from our guy, Dalton, fellow member of the Big Cock Club. Appreciate him calling in. Guys, we got about 10 minutes before we jump into a break, and then we're going to get JC Sherbert on the show. So go ahead and reach out, 843-790-3377. Again, I appreciate Michael Bratton, SEC Mike, joining the show. Unfortunately, we couldn't have his camera on, but either way, appreciate him and you guys rolling with the punches as well and being understanding with everything. Let's see. Anyways, DGD, I saw you ask me earlier, is everybody ready for September? Who's ready for September? He says, man, I'm not rushing baseball, man. I'm not rushing baseball, DGD. I love baseball season. I mean, I'm a baseball guy, though, right? I'm a baseball guy, which thank goodness I am, by the way, because I just imagine, like, if you don't like basketball or baseball, if you're just solely football, what do you do? Like, what do you do in the spring? And what do you do in the summer? Like what do you have to entertain yourself? Like, what do you diligently watch? What do you diligently follow? You know what I mean? I know there's spring practice, but who is? I mean, what do you get? All you get out of spring practice is a couple of pressers here and there, and you get the spring game, and that's pretty much it, right? And I know that news drops on a daily basis and it never stops, but yeah. Anyways, so. KFC in Africa says baseball is so damn boring. Well, I'll tell you this, KFC, and I totally understand that baseball is not for everybody. And we were talking about this in the Big Cock Club Discord the other day. You know, my goal with the baseball content, because obviously I'm passionate about baseball. Like, I love it. You know, I played it, so it's a little bit different. It hits home for me. But my goal with baseball content, my goal is to make it informative enough for the diehard while also entertaining enough for the casual, right? If I can provide insight and analysis to those that love the game of baseball while also keeping those that, you know, they don't want to watch every game, but they want to be entertained, they want to follow along in a fun, relaxed, casual manner, you know, I want to be able to provide that too. So I like to think my content sort of falls in the middle, and that really goes for all sports, right? I like to think my content is able to bring value to all types of fans. Like, you don't have to be a diehard baseball fan to enjoy the baseball content that we create. That's what I try to do. That's what I pride myself on, and just try to be provide as entertaining a content as possible each and every single day. So anyways, Bruin Nation says, love baseball, Gamecocks and Braves. Helps the summer go by faster. No doubt. No doubt. Not that we're trying to rush the summer, but I get what you're saying, Bruin Nation. It's I love the Yardcocks, man. I love the fact that I get to cover baseball. You know what I mean? It's just a blast, and can't wait for the season and just, hoping for the best, man. I mean, you know, we were talking about this morning on Inside the Gamecocks with JC Sherbert about, South Carolina baseball and just how much fun it is, how much fun Columbia is and Founders Park is. And we got meaningful baseball in late April, early May, right? We've got a really, really good ball club. It's just, I mean, there's few ballparks that are more fun and more electric than Founders Park, truly. So hope to see some postseason baseball back in Columbia. And, you know, I was at that regional in 2021, and I mean, it was just a blast, dude. I mean, it was a blast. So really hoping to get back down there for that. And just excited for the season. We've got 22 days till first pitch, basically 3 weeks till first pitch. So I'm looking forward to it, man. I'm looking forward to it. So it's going to be a good time. It's going to be a good time. Anyways, 843-790-3377. That's 843-790-3377. C says, I do enjoy watching the North Greenville baseball team. Yeah, they're really good. Yeah, they're really good. It's a shame. I'm up here in Greenville. It's a shame that Furman disbanded their baseball program. That's just such a shame. Such a shame. Impacted by COVID. They said, nope, we're cutting it out the budget. Bad move. That's a poor move. It looks like, guys, the schedule for next week, we're going to have my good friend J.D. Piquel of On 3 on TDC on Monday. And then on Tuesday, who do we have Tuesday? We got Southeastern 14 on Tuesday. Those guys. We got them on Tuesday. So we got a jam-packed week. So we'll have guests, we'll have guests on the Daily Crow Monday through Thursday of next week. Monday through Thursday of next week, we will have guests on the show. So going to be a lot of fun. Looking forward to it. Going to be a lot of fun. Coach Ford, not a baseball fan. I like going to the field here in Greenville, but not a TV watcher. Get stuff done before football. I hear you, Coach Ford. I hear you, man. I hear you. Maybe I'll run into you at one of these Greenville games. I will. My plan is probably to go to all the Floor Field games. So, because it's 10 minutes from me. So, and Floor Field's a beautiful ballpark. Really is. So, big wash. Just college baseball doesn't get enough credit. It's actually surprisingly good. The media don't give it enough coverage. I agree. I think it's still very, very undercovered. I don't know if that's even the right word. It's not covered in depth enough, I will say. It's not televised enough for sure. It's not televised enough for sure. Brendan, what's up, my friend? How are you? What's going on? Appreciate you tuning in, Brendan. I don't know if you heard this earlier, Brendan, but the spring tour probably will not start until like last week of March, maybe even beginning of April. So we've got quite a while. So you might even be out of school by the time we do our Greenville date. I don't know. I don't know when the semester ends, but Carolina Ale House wanted to push back to when it's warmer. They wanted to push back to when it was warmer. So we shall see. By the way, guys, Elijah Caldwell, 2023 3-star wide receiver. Per Sports Talk, he is announcing his commitment today within this hour. Okay, so I don't know if it's going to be on Instagram. I don't know if it's going to be on Twitter. They didn't specify where, but per Sports Talk and per his coach, Northwestern wide receiver, Elijah Caldwell, set to announce his commitment decision between the Gamecocks and NC State Thursday afternoon between 1 and 2. So sometime in this next hour, he's picking either South Carolina or NC State, and we'll keep you up to date. We're going to have JC Sherbert on at 1:15. We might be reacting to that commitment live. So good chance we'll be reacting to that commitment live. Really excited for that. Any basketball talk? Anybody watch the basketball game? We're just like completely done with it. Did anybody watch the basketball game last night? Did anybody watch it? I highly doubt it, but I'm just curious at this point. Rough sledding. It's tough sledding for Gamecocks basketball, man. I don't blame any of you. It's a tough product to watch. I mean, I said that on the podcast, guys, and if you want to claim I'm a bad fan for saying this, so be it. But as fans, right, as common fans, you have your obligations, you've got family, you've got work, you've got hobbies, you've got other things going on. And at the end of the day, Gamecocks athletics is a product. And I mean, if the product's not worthy of your time, your energy, certainly your money, but bottom line is this, unfortunately, there's no expectations. And when there's no expectations, apathy sets in. And when there's no expectations, there's almost no reason to watch. And so I'm not telling anybody not to watch. I'm just telling you that I don't blame anybody that's sort of just kind of casually keeping one eye on it and, not making it a point of emphasis to watch these games. And, I would say to sell you on it, if I was telling you to watch GG Jackson, because he continues to play well, but it's just a tough scene, tough reality, tough set of circumstances, if you will, at the University of South Carolina when it comes to the basketball program and what's going on. And, you just got to grin and bear it and learn to focus on the small wins. And hopefully Lamont Paris is able to recruit and build this thing. But certainly tough right now. All right, guys, that being said, we're going to go ahead and jump into a break. On the other side, though, we got JC Sherbert of Inside the Gamecocks of the Big Spur. He will join us. All that and much more on the other side. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. All right, guys, we're back. Appreciate you all tuning in here this Thursday, January the 26th, 2023. It is 1:15, of course, each and every single Thursday. I go on Inside the Gamecocks at 11:30 a.m. to talk South Carolina athletics, all the happenings, everything that's going on. And every single Thursday at 1:15, our good friend JC Sherbert of Inside the Gamecocks of the Big Spur, he joins us right now to break everything down. JC, what's going on, my friend? Great to see you. How you doing?
Hey, great to be with you, Chris, today. Great segment, great show, and lots of good things happening out there. And so glad to talk to you today.
First things first, I love the beanie, JC. I love like the Yankee gray vibes, right? I feel like that black with white outline on gray is very, very underrated. And of course, Ray Tanner made it very popular. But I like when I see merch with that. I feel like that's a very underrated look. So I'm loving it. I'm digging that.
I got to give my brother Cam. He helps me with Carolina Rise. He's my partner with it, and he put this together for I guess we had about 70 or 80 Gamecocks sign up for that before we even had a website. It was just on PayPal, and so we promised them like charter member swag, and my fiance was one of them. So she got a box with this stuff in it. But I agree, those Yankee-looking Ray Tanner uniforms during that era were sweet. I love it. Really sweet uniforms. I dig them. I think those uniforms scream excellence. So that's why I like
them. Well, they're still rocking them now. The only problem is we haven't been quite as excellent as we were. Hopefully that changes soon. But, the Yankee gray is an all-time look. And I don't know if you knew this, JC, but one of the reasons the Gamecocks rock those uniforms and also rock pinstripes, Ray Tanner is a Yankees fan. So that's where he got his inspiration when they changed the uniforms. Because I think they went to those, they changed the uniforms a good bit when he was there. If you look back over like the early 2000s, but they released those, or they went to those pinstripes and those Yankee grays. I think it was like 2008, maybe 09, I want to say, when they first started the new stadium. So they haven't even been around that long, but it's one of those things with uniforms when you win back-to-back national championships. I got a buddy of mine. He's like, I don't know how I feel about the pinstripes. I'm like, well, they're not going anywhere because they're iconic at this point. They're iconic, right? Like, so it's, So, anyways.
I agree completely. Completely.
We could spend the entire show talking uniforms, at least.
Another school in our state, I always thought their baseball uniforms kind of look like softball uniforms. So I think the Gamecocks, who have bragging rights over Clemson in baseball for forever until they beat Carolina in the College World Series, I think that's another thing that Carolina's got on them is the Gamecock uniforms are much more classy, I guess, more like baseball, and there's kind of like softball. I've always thought that, but anyway.
I would agree. I'd say you're spot on. JC, let's get into the recruiting side of things, just South Carolina football as a whole, because what a busy week. Since you and I last spoke last week, of course, Gamecocks land Cam Pringle, Michael Smith. I mean, right, it's never too early to start talking the 2024 class, even 2025. I want to get into 2023 in a second as Shane Beamer continues to put the finishing touches on the class. And while we have you on today, we may even see another commitment. Elijah Caldwell is expected to announce his decision. And actually, Justin Stepp just 5 minutes ago tweeted I believe this is Daffy Duck gif of him doing like the fingers, like he's like waiting on something. So I would assume that means probably some positive news is around the corner. But first, let's focus on what we know right now. And again, that is Shane Beamer and company. The Gamecocks are off to a fast start in the 2024 class. I was just looking, JC, on 24/7 Sports. They're ranked 12th overall with commitments from 3 4-stars, Cam Pringle, Michael Smith, Dante Reno, 2 of those 3 coming this week. And Cam Pringle, the number 1 rated offensive tackle in the 2024 class. And you look, and what really stood out to me, JC, the 46th ranked player nationally. I feel like to be ranked that high as an offensive lineman, you got to be really good. 0.9736 on the composite. We'll start with Pringle first. Your thoughts on him? I know we spoke on this last week, of course, but now that the Gamecocks have landed him, just your overall thoughts and how big of a pickup that is literally and figuratively for South Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when you look at the 2024 cycle in the state of South Carolina, you probably have to go back to the 1990s. Brad Scott signed a really, really good offensive line class later in his tenure here. But a lot of those guys, gosh, for whatever reason, career-ending injuries, didn't make it into school, whatever. And that's the last time I think in this state you've had really more than one elite offensive line prospect. I mean, these guys, Pringle and Thompson, are a lot like Brandon Shell or Alex Barron back in the day that went to Florida State from Orangeburg Wilkinson. Those types of guys. And that's to take nothing away from a Jordan McFadden at Clemson, who's awfully good at offensive tackle, or, your TJ Johnsons and AJ Cans through the years, or, anybody else from within the state, Kyle Nunn from within the state that started and had a good career at Carolina. These guys, though, these are the type of guys Georgia and Alabama sign. Your 6'7", 300+ pound guys that can move their feet. Pringle is not, sometimes, and I was talking to one of our evaluators at 24/7 Sports, and a good rule of thumb when you're evaluating offensive tackles is you want guys like 6'7", 270 instead of 60 pounds heavier. But the difference is, the reason you don't want that extra weight is because it's easier to put bulk on these big guys than to get it off of them. But Pringle's not a big fat guy. I mean, he's really quite lean for that big, and so is Josiah Thompson. So, really big pickup, number 1 tackle in the country. I think his overall ranking is going to continue to go up because most of the time when you're doing the rankings, your top offensive tackle, not necessarily a guard. It's hard to get a 5-star rating as a guard or a center, but as a tackle, if you're the best in the country, you're usually in that 5-star range. So I expect he and Josiah Thompson both, and I do think Thompson will be a Gamecock eventually, to be amongst the best in the country at that position. And that's unprecedented when you're talking about in-state recruiting and just kind of the types of players. They've had D linemen like this before, a lot, because it's D-line heaven, right? Offensive tackles like this, only once in a blue moon. So, Carolina's done a really good job of getting this one in the boat, and then they got to close on Thompson. And I think, wow, you look at that, you look down the road, you could definitely have 2 really good bookends starting for the Gamecocks here in a few years.
JC, what do you attribute that success to? Because I know I've spoken on it a lot in regards to, like, I love the fact that Beamer is committing to recruiting guys in the trenches, right? I mean, he obviously understands it's a line of scrimmage league, but I mean, you think back, I mean, South Carolina had some pretty good offensive lines from 10 to 13 during that run, if you will. But I mean, the Gamecocks have never recruited like this when it comes to the offensive line talent. And again, they're doing it on both sides. I mean, do you attribute that to anything specifically? I mean, is the tandem of this thing with Shane Beamer? Like, is it just a great run of players they're kind of running into? Like, do you feel like it's a philosophy thing, or is it just kind of working out this way? Because South Carolina is obviously making some major waves when it comes to recruiting big time offensive linemen specifically.
Yeah, I think you had to give Lonnie Teasley, Greg Atkins, along with Sam Searby, who I believe is either a grad assistant or an analyst on the O-line, a lot of credit. They've done a great job of building relationships with these guys. And then it kind of all just feeds one on top of the other. Taylor Edwards, the director of player personnel, is also very good at this. And last year, to get a guy like Big Tree, Bob Alade, and Marquis Anderson, and Trovon Ball, who probably is better than even his low 4-star ranking says as an interior guy, and to get those guys in early and then close like they did, even with some help in the portal this year on the offensive line, I think that's a testament to their ability to build relationships. I think that at the end of the day, would it have been easier for Big Tree to stay at home, given some things that have happened in his personal life? Yeah, sure. But the relationship won out. The comfort level won out. And all recruiting decisions are based on that comfort level. And you don't get to that ultimate comfort level without a nice blend, including having great relationships. You can have relationships, but if you're not showing promise as a football program, i.e. winning, that's going to cause that comfort level to decrease because kids want to go where they want to win. If you don't have facilities, that can cause the comfort level to decrease, but Shane Beamer and his staff have not only done a great job doing the relationship building, but also, I think, putting on the field an emerging product. And it really started with A&M this year. That game had a ton of recruits at it, especially 2024 guys. And that's kind of where the groundwork is laid. Williams-Brice Stadium looks like a rock concert now. In that environment for that game and the Tennessee game, it was second to none. And those were the big weekends where guys came in and were just kind of blown away. I mean, you have players participating and storming the field afterward. From a recruiting standpoint, that's almost unheard of, because most of the time your recruits, they're not really there as fans. They're just kind of checking it out. But the atmospheres at Williams-Brice, the fact that the team, was the talk of college football for 2 weeks, really on into the bowl game. I think the fact that you've got coaches there that want to build relationships and kind of embody what Shane Beamer wants to do with this program, with the culture and all of that, I think that speaks to success. And yeah, you're right. South Carolina's never recruited like this on the O-line. I'll say this, and it's not to rain on a parade or anything, but O-line is a lot of a good crapshoot sometimes. If you look at the draft, you'll have a guy that was a 5-star that may have gone somewhere that was, ranked, he's the first tackle taken. And the next guy is this guy from Northern Iowa that was like 6'9", 220 going into college and had one offer. And now he's 6'9", 310 and a monster, because so much depends on Mother Nature, Chris, at this position, how you're going to grow, how you're going to fill out. Mitch Hyatt at Clemson, for example, 5-star offensive tackle, really good college player, did not get drafted. Why? Because he never really got above 275 pounds, and you got to be bigger than that to play in the league. So it is a crapshoot. A coach that you and I both know well told me one time, he said, on offensive line, if you sign 5 and 3 of them pan out, that's a good day. That's a good year. So I'm not going to sit there and say they're going to be Alabama or Georgia or A&M lining up here in 2 or 3 years. But hey, the more you get, if you do hit 3 of 5, that means you get 6 or 7, rather than 4, 4 or 5 and have weak links. So I think there's reason to be excited. Shane Beamer has been clear that he wants to run the football. He believes in running the ball, that you have to do that. He's absolutely right. And to run it effectively, you have to have the big uglies up front. And Carolina is in the process of upgrading across the board with the last class and now this cycle.
JC, sticking with the 2024 class, just a couple days later after Cam Pringle, again, the momentum continued. Michael Smith from Savannah, Georgia, Calvary Day School, 6'4", 225-pound tight end, another 4-star, a .9412 on the 24/7 Sports Composite, the 6th ranked tight end in the country in the 2024 class. He chooses the Gamecocks, and JC, you can tell a lot by a kid's offer list. And I mean, this dude was offered by everybody. I mean, everybody wanted this kid. Just talk about his commitment, how big of a deal it is for South Carolina to, again, go into the state of Georgia and pull a guy like this. Again, the size jumps out to me, again, 6'4", 225, but the offer list especially. I mean, we're talking Alabama, Auburn, LSU. Like, everybody wanted this kid. Who did he not have an offer from? Your overall thoughts on the Michael Smith commitment?
Yeah, he reminds me a lot of, I think I've mentioned Clemson 3 or 4 times here so far. I hate to keep doing that, but Dwayne Allen, who played at Clemson and also was in the NFL for a while. I think he played for the Seahawks or somebody like that. Kid out of Eastern North Carolina. That's who Michael Smith reminds me of. He's not your the Washington kid from Georgia, 6'7", 280. Looks like Zion Williamson out there or something like that. And that's not who this guy is. He's more compact, almost built like a bigger receiver. I say he's probably, Dwayne Allen or Busta Anderson. But Busta, remember, was 205 coming out of McEachern High School in Powder Springs, Georgia. This guy's already 230. So I feel pretty good about this guy, putting on 15, 20 pounds and keeping his speed and athleticism and hands, and, a special athlete. Dowell Loggins was kind of the cherry on top of the sundae, if you will. Eric Kimry, offered Smith first before he left. Carolina's been recruiting him a while. They were the first to offer. Then Jody Wright takes over, and Dowell Loggins was Smith's recruiter at Arkansas, right? And Arkansas was kind of in his top 2. It was kind of came down to Arkansas and the Gamecocks, and that tells you a little bit about Dowell Loggins' ability to recruit. If you're going to go all the way from Fayetteville, Arkansas to coastal Georgia, and with a kid with all those offers, and you're getting his top 2, you're probably a pretty good recruiter, I would guess. And so when Loggins came on board, it was just a formality matter of time. And certainly, this guy is in that tier of Georgia prospects, Chris. I think it's critical for South Carolina to win their share of battles in. Right now, you're probably not going to go beat Georgia or Alabama on the players in that state. They won't. You're also going to have a couple that go to like Ohio State or wherever, Florida State, that just for whatever reason they want to go there. But then there's a whole swath of guys that Auburn recruits, Tennessee recruits, South Carolina and Florida recruit. Those are the types of battles you have to win in the state of Georgia. And if you look at last cycle, 2023, I think when they had 4 guys that were 4 stars or higher in Georgia that were in that tier, they won a lot of battles. Right now, Michael Smith's the first. You do have Wendell Gregory, another one of those Georgia 4 stars coming up, and so the Gamecocks again are using that state, which is important. You think about the history of the program: George Rogers, Connor Shaw, Sterling Sharp, all those guys are from Georgia, right? Going back to the late Dan Reeves, Georgia. I mean, he's from Americus. So South Carolina, historically, some of their better players have come from that state, and it's important. And I think there have been some staffs at times, like the Lou Holt staff at the end, did not recruit the state. Didn't really do much over there at all. And then, under Spurrier, you didn't have a whole big commitment to it. But then it got to the point too, Chris, where at times when Lorenzo Ward was here, they would take a lot of guys out of that state that were probably the wrong guys. I mean, for every Mike Davis, there were 3 guys that never played. And you got to be careful with that too. I think under Will Muschamp and now under Shane Beamer, it's almost been fine-tuned. Carolina, the last, 6-7 years, they've been focused on, smaller numbers from Georgia, but the right guys. And I think that says a lot, and it's probably an understated thing when you kind of look at Carolina's recruiting, because, these guys aren't in the top 5 in that state, but they're right there in that 20-25 range. And they're a hell of a lot of good players right there. I mean, there's too many for Georgia to take. So I think that's exactly the strategy that needs to happen. And it's paid off and will continue to pay off. I think that there's a lot of reason for optimism right now with regards to recruiting.
On that note, JC, as you were speaking, Elijah Caldwell has officially committed to the Gamecocks, the 3-star wide receiver out of Northwestern, Rock Hill, South Carolina, a .8683 on the composite. Chooses South Carolina over NC State. Your live reaction to his commitment, 6 foot 190 out of Northwestern, by the way, for the 2023 class.
I think this one may end up being bigger than people think. Just going back and, he was committed, I think, to East Carolina, and this is one of those things, man. East Carolina and App State both, if they got a kid from South Carolina, they got him in early. A lot of times that guy ends up being a really good player when all is said and done. I just watch him play, and it's that Northwestern high school offense. Like, they've always run a lot of short passes. It's probably the closest thing in high school to Mike Leach's air raid that I've seen. Just not a lot of vertical, but a lot of horizontal short passes, catch it and run, use your athletes. And boy, when Elijah Caldwell gets the ball, he can get it and go. Had a huge state championship game against South Florence. I talked to somebody today. Maybe it was on my message board, I don't know, but or maybe on the show. But he said he's a South Florence fan. He said Elijah burnt them to the ground in the state championship game. And in this state, man, I'll tell you somebody else that was a late pickup at receiver, Debo Samuel. I'll never forget the day that Steve Spurrier Jr. decided to take him. The word was, he's like, I'm going to take Tyshun Samuel. So Tyshun was, and that was something I don't think any of us it didn't even register with the rest of us until maybe 2016, how good Debo was. So in this state, receivers work out more times than not. It's a defensive line state. It's a wide receiver state, and you can usually find DBs just about every year. And so I think because he's Northwestern in state, enough speed, obviously, enough ball skills, obviously. Look out for Elijah Caldwell, because this could be one that, is kind of understated. Like I said, here he's committing January 26th. It's a little under the radar. It wouldn't surprise me to see him on the radar sooner rather than later.
There you go. Elijah Caldwell from Northwestern. Big time get for sure at the wide receiver position. Let's keep it rolling, JC, with recruiting. I know we touched on this morning, but Nicholas Harbor, all eyes will be on him next Wednesday on National Signing Day as he makes his decision. I know Shane Beamer and company were in-house last night. I'm sure giving their best possible sales pitch. Oregon gets him for their last visit this weekend. I know you're not overly optimistic, which, again, as I told you this morning, I think it's very normal to just kind of be cautious about it, because who knows? I mean, nobody knows, right? I don't feel like there's really any lean at this point. Is that accurate to say? I mean, do you think – I would ask you this. If he doesn't go to South Carolina, where do you think he'll end up? Do you have a feeling, or do you think it's in Oregon? Do you think it's a Michigan? I know his mom likes Michigan a lot. I know from talking to folks behind the scenes that, South Carolina's 2023 recruits and commitments are very tight with him, and they're close, and they have a great relationship, and they feel like that can give them the edge. But unless you're in a Harbor's head or in the household with him, or you're best friends with him, you probably don't know where he's going. And heck, he might not even know where he's going at this point.
Yeah, I don't know that he does. I think he's going to give Oregon a long look, Chris. And we talked about it on the show just now. I Googled and I forgot, because I've been out there, right? I've been to the campus. And the thing about Oregon and University of Oregon is this. You look at it on TV, or you see pictures, you're like, man, those are all nice facilities. And they are. But like Alton Stadium, where they play football, you could fit that probably inside Williams-Brice and still have room to spare. Same with basketball, same with baseball. They're smaller venues, like quality over quantity. Their track facility is it looks like something from another country. Like when you turn it on and see these international track meets, double-decker stadium, stuff like that. So I think that's impressive. Steve Prefontaine ran track out there. Phil Knight, all that good stuff. So for a track athlete, it's going to be impressive. I think Michigan's kind of been that team that maybe even before the Gamecocks emerged was kind of the team to beat. And then, of course, South Carolina. I'd be surprised if it weren't one of those three. You never know with Maryland, because when it gets down to closing time, Maryland will just start throwing everything at them, because they have nothing to lose. So you never know with Maryland. So I don't want to count the Terps out, but I think it'll be one of those three. It's one of those weird things. I'm probably not as optimistic as, maybe even my contacts within the football program are about it. And it's probably, like I said earlier, it's probably because my two big stories, quote unquote, I've had since December have been Dowell Loggins and Trajan Jeffcoat. And I'm like, both of those caused let's just say they both caused a reaction. So maybe I'm just gun shy, but I'm just I don't know. I think the in-home visit last night went really well with Beamer. Beamer's really good with the in-home. So we'll see sort of how that plays out. And, certainly I think there's, good news for the Gamecock fans out there. There's reason to tune in on the traditional signing day again. Normally you're just last couple of years, it's been nothing, but there's a big announcement coming. So we'll see sort of what happens.
Do we know time? Has he announced that yet? Or is that, I would assume he's going to work with a network and do it like nationally televised.
Probably. And I don't know if, I don't know if that's been set yet. I'm assuming he'll either do it with like CBS 24/7 Sports, because they'll have an all-day thing going on, or maybe even like or ESPN. It'll be one of those two if it is televised. And if it's not, I'm sure there'll be some streaming or something. Somebody will be up in Washington, D.C. making it happen.
Yeah, don't think that one's going to go under the radar. That's safe to say.
Probably not.
Yeah. JC, I appreciate you being gracious with your time. Last thing, man, I definitely want to mention this. I feel like this sort of went under the radar, but Gamecocks did, it came out this week. Eddie Lewis, the transfer wide receiver from Memphis, he's officially enrolled, so it became officially official. And you look at what he did at Memphis, was a solid player for them. I wanted to ask you about his addition, right? Because I wanted to make sure we give credit to it because we've seen South Carolina. I mean, you look at Juice Wells specifically, they've been able to go in the transfer portal and pick up guys that, I know Juice Wells is obviously an All-American and a record setter at the FCS level versus where Lewis was just kind of a nice piece for the Memphis Tigers. But did you have any thoughts on his game? I know, the reason I asked too is because, outside of Juice, I think wide receiver 2 is pretty wide open. I mean, you're going to have guys like Leggett and Brown and Joyner and Sampson and Omega Blake and maybe some young guys fighting for it, but I don't think you have that clear-cut second. Definitely don't have a clear-cut third option. So maybe a guy like Lewis could slide in. And then just on the note of the transfer portal, would you expect South Carolina to target anyone specifically or any specific positions, maybe I should say, as we continue to move forward? Because certainly now that you're probably not getting Jeffcoat, right? I think that's at best case on life support. I doubt it's happening. There's definitely some holes in this roster I think you could certainly plug with players in the portal, especially, I guess, it'll probably open up, I don't know exactly, after spring ball, maybe something like that, and you'll see some more movement. But just overall thoughts on the Lewis pickup and then the portal as a whole, how you think the Gamecocks will attack that.
Yeah, they still need edge. I don't think they would turn down a really good running back if they had that ability to go get a guy like that. Receiver, if there is a guy out there, I can see it happening. By the way, I was wrong. I was confusing Jakari Caldwell with Elijah Caldwell. Elijah Caldwell was committed to West Virginia. So he was a Big 12 commit. I apologize for that because I said East Carolina at the beginning of the show. But again, West Virginia, they throw it all over the yard. They love guys like this. So that's even better, right? So I think that's what they'll target. I think they're done on the offensive line. I think unless there's a special player on the interior of the D-line, they're done. I think if they had a linebacker that they could get, they'd probably go. Corner, kind of 50-50 because, there were some corners they could have gotten in the game with in the portal and elected not to just because of some, silly demands that were coming in from, certain players' inner circles about wanting to start. They really like the young defensive backs they have. And I've learned not to just to always trust Torian Gray on that, right? And so, I think linebacker, running back, definitely defensive end / edge will be, some places Carolina will go at the very least window shopping. The issue's been too, I mean, you look at the transfer portal, Chris, and there are defensive ends in there, but Carolina's evaluated a lot of these guys. And, I talked to some people from some other schools too. The edge this year is kind of the offensive line situation from last year in the portal. Just aren't a lot of good players, and so it's tough to be in this position if you're South Carolina this year. Maybe that's why Gilbert Edmond and Jordan Birch were such wanted products this year because there isn't anybody. And so I think that's what also made the Jeffcoat thing pretty disappointing. But if they can find them, they can get them. I think Desmond Umeozulu, Montague Rames, come on down if it's your time to shine. Jordan Strong's got to get back from injury, and even at that, I'm not so sure there won't be some kind of not necessarily a changing of the scheme, but maybe a more of an emphasis on odd man fronts and things like that, exotic looks next year for Clayton White. Because if you just don't have guys that can get out there and compete at the edge, you have to figure something else out. And the Gamecocks may not have the luxury of trotting out a 4-down front and doing what they normally do. But Clayton uses a lot of odd front anyway. And so maybe you just kind of tweak it and emphasize more of that next season to get a pass rush off and make sure you can stop people, get the ball back to what should be a pretty good offense next year.
Well, JC, we went the entire segment without talking basketball, so I guess we could call that a success. No, I'm just kidding. Maybe that's a little harsh. Anything you want to say on basketball? I mean, another tough one last night, but Gigi Jackson's fun to watch.
I'm having a hard time finding hope with it, and I think it has more to do with like the state of recruiting in that sport, because it's all NIL, free agency, whatever. And so I have a hard time finding hope because if you go through a season like this normally, it's like, okay, well, there's reinforcements are on the way, right? That's not the case. Well, no offense to the guys that are committed, the two in-state guys, they're pretty good, but you're not sitting there waiting on the Fab Five to come in or anything like that, and you kind of wonder, this year's portal class that Lamont went and got, I'd say probably below average is what you call it, and so. Is he gonna be able to get a higher quality guy in here? What's the plan? And I know he told Mike Morgan, when Mike came over for the Ole Miss game, that he should have hit the portal a little harder. Well, I mean, great, but I mean, you knew you had three guys on the roster. So, and I'm not being critical. I'm just saying, yeah, well, maybe it's a lesson learned for a guy that just got to this SEC level. But we'll see what happens with him. Certainly, it's hard to watch. I'm glad the baseball team has a typical Ray Tanner type schedule where they shouldn't lose a whole lot the first month or two of the season. So it'll at least give Gamecock fans some hope on the field or court or whatever. But right now it's just it's a tough situation with that men's basketball team, and it may get worse before it gets better. So unfortunately, so hopefully that won't be the case. But right now it's kind of what it is.
Indeed. JC Sherbert of Inside the Gamecocks, the Big Spur, joining us every single Thursday. JC, man, I appreciate you taking the time. It's always a pleasure to chat with you, and looking forward to doing it again next week, my friend. Should be a fun one with National Signing Day on Wednesday.
Heck yeah, Chris. Thanks to all y'all out there that listen, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, man. Sounds good. Appreciate you. Great stuff from JC Sherbert, as always. Guys, in case you missed anything of that conversation, of course, TDC drops on our podcast feed every single day at 3 p.m. Eastern. Also, we'll have the full YouTube segment with JC Sherbert on our YouTube channel. That's just the Spurs Up Show, of course. So go check that out. Guys, we're going to jump into one final break. On the other side, I want to continue to hear from you. We'll open it up for your questions, your comments, your calls, and more. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. All right, guys, we're back. Final 8 minutes or so here on the Daily Crow. Appreciate you tuning in. A great segment yet again from our friend JC Sherbert of Inside the Gamecocks of the Big Spur. Always enjoy having JC on the show. And again, it's always great conversation. Elijah Caldwell committing to South Carolina, 3-star wide receiver out of Northwestern, Rock Hill, South Carolina, right there in John Edwards' neck of the woods. How about you, John Edwards? 6 foot, 190, a .8683 on the 24/7 Sports Composite. He chose the Gamecocks over NC State. Of course, at one time was committed to West Virginia. So overall, great to keep him home, great to keep him in state. And the recruiting momentum continues for South Carolina football and Shane Beamer. Guys, phone lines are open. Would love to hear your questions, comments, calls as we close out the show here on this Thursday. Let's go ahead and get into it.
Robbie Davis, Zaxby's Hall of Famer.
To accept, press.
Robbie, what's going on, my friend? How are you?
I'm doing all right. My mom's dog's acting a fool. He was just dragging his tunnel thing all over the front of the living room. It was funny. So
I got you. Hey, Robbie, do me a favor, Robbie. Call back in 30 seconds. I'm going to reset the phone because your volume is real low, and I think it's on my end. So give me 30 seconds and then call back in, all right?
All right.
All right, cool. All right, give me 1 second. I'm going to mute this real quick. Okay, there we go. Robbie Davis, you're listening. Please give us a call back. I forgot to reset this while over the break. I was posting the commitment graphic from Elijah Caldwell, and if you touch this cord, you've got to reset it, make sure the volume's set up correctly. So, Robbie, call back in. Would love to chat with you. I know you're watching. 843-790-3377. Appreciate you, Jeff Gullidge. Yeah, those were 2 great conversations. I appreciate the kind words, Jeff. Always a pleasure. Anyways, so Greg Bedinger says, quote, I'm having a hard time finding hope. That sums it up pretty good for me also. Yeah, I'd say that's pretty accurate. All right, here we go. Let's try this again.
Call from
Robbie Davis, Zaxby's Hall of Famer.
Much better. Much better. Much better, Robbie. Appreciate your patience. What's going on?
Oh, and nothing much. Just watching my mom's dog.
Nice. Very good.
Before I called in the first time, he was dragging his little red tunnel thing all over the kitchen and all over the living room, and now it's near the front door. He's just acting a fool.
Gotcha. You all settled in Somerville or no?
Almost. After I get off of here, I'm gonna grab a trash bag that I have full of clean clothes and fold them and then take them up to my room. So,
Gotcha.
But I'm doing pretty good. Almost completely settled in here, which is a good thing. Do you really want my assessment of what I saw last night?
I mean, you're more than welcome to do so, Robbie. By the way, I don't know if you knew this. Women's do not play tonight. They're off till Sunday. So I was just checking. That's a bit of a side note, but yeah, my guy, if you wanna, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that 21-point loss to Florida last night.
First off, again, like I said the other day, I'm shocked we scored over 50 with how horrible we have played. And like you said yesterday, and like a lot of people said yesterday, it would have been a very Gamecockish thing to do to go into Gainesville and somehow pull off the W.
Mm-hmm.
But that really tall fella, however you pronounce his name, for Florida, that
Castleton?
dude can ball. Yeah, that dude.
Yeah.
That dude is an absolute stud, okay? And I noticed anytime we were on offense, there was not a lot of passing. There was way too much dribbling. And I told Marion R26 this last night, and I said, that's the problem right there. That's why we're not doing so good. We're not passing the ball all over the court because the ball moves faster than the players do.
Mhm.
And in order for a team that's not that good to get high percentage shots, you've got to move the ball, and we did not do that last night, hardly at all.
Mhm.
If it wasn't for G.G. Jackson, we could have very easily lost by 30 or 40.
That is a fact. Yeah.
And
that is a fact.
And honestly, I would not have started Hayden Brown over Josh Gray because he had 3 fouls not even halfway through the first half.
Yeah, Hayden Brown's a Hayden Brown's a fouling machine, my guy. He seems to get in foul trouble very often.
He's got to stop doing that because if it was me, I'd be like, you need to quit fouling, or you're going to be sitting your keister on the bench until further notice because this is getting ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And just because he was a great scorer at the Citadel doesn't mean he's going to be a great scorer in the SEC. There's a major difference between the conference that the Citadel is in and the SEC. I mean, watching him last night, he missed layups I very easily could have made if I was over 6 foot. But I'm not over 6 foot.
How tall are you, Robbie?
I am, I think, last time I went to the doctor, they said I was like 5'6.5" or almost 5'7", somewhere around there.
So you and Dowell Loggins are the same exact height. Do you know that?
I did not know that until you told me.
Yeah. Dowell Loggins, I think, is 5'7".
But like I said yesterday, right? We need to get to the point to where especially with the men's basketball team, obviously the girls team, it's NCAA tournament and national championship or bust. But with the men's team, we need to just get to the point to where we're getting to the NIT and getting far in the NIT. And I think that would help tremendously with recruiting, which it's hard to recruit anyways these days with NIL and all this other BS that's going on, and the transfer portal and all that mess. But I do believe at some point in the future, this basketball team will at least be not great, but competitive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's what's most concerning is we're just not. Yeah, we're just not competitive. We're just not competitive. So it's tough to watch. Tough to watch.
Very tough. And how many more days we got until we start swinging the sticks, my guy?
Yeah, 22 days. 22 days. About 3 weeks.
Golly, it couldn't get any. Is there any way to get here faster?
Unfortunately, I don't think so, Robbie. I wish. Yeah.
But I've already talked to David Garrett. We're gonna try and go to some baseball games this year. So I told him that if he decides to go to any, hit me up and we'll figure out a way to get to meet up somewhere. Since I now live in Corner, so
very good.
And I'm gonna go ahead and get off of here because I know it's probably past 2:00. And you have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you tomorrow.
Robbie, you're the man. I appreciate you.
Appreciate you too, my friend.
All right, brother.
Have a good one.
Take care. You too. Appreciate it. Great stuff from Robbie and a great way to end today's show. Guys, again, thank you all so much. I want to say thank you to SEC Mike and JC Sherbert for taking the time to hop onto the show. Make sure you check out the podcast, by the way, that also dropped this morning. Episode 754, we broke down everything, caught you up on all the happenings with Gamecocks football. Also, the position unit preview series continues as we talk Yardcocks catchers entering the season. We broke down the basketball game last night as well. And then Aaron Fitt of D1Baseball.com, he joined me for a great conversation regarding the 2023 Yardcocks Ball Club and everything upcoming with the season. Outside of that, guys, appreciate y'all so much. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a fantastic rest of your Thursday, and we will talk to you all tomorrow.